Hello, everyone. Welcome to the BSB Bookathon Fall Edition. And this is Love at Work, which is not a guide on lovemaking, but instead is about jobs that our various authors have written about.
Uh-oh.
I'm Barbara Ann Wright. I'm your moderator for this and every other panel. So I'm going to be asking the questions here, and let us kick off with, tell us some of the jobs or careers your characters have had. Elle Spencer.
Okay. Actress, art dealer, doctor, lawyer, real estate developer, architect, wedding photographer, artist, TV executive. What?
That is a lot. And that's just one character.
Yeah.
Melissa Brayden.
Yes. I was trying to think of this right before we came on. There was a lot. So I was just going through kind of a sampling. I know I'm most recently writing a winemaker and a cafe owner of the Biscuit and Bacon and Biscuit Cafe. So all about breakfast food. I've been doing heavy breakfast research. Surfer, ballet dancer, actresses of all varieties. I've done chocolate maker, documentary filmmaker, professional author, fashion designer, TV producer, all over the board. A lot of creative jobs I've noticed that I think those are fun for me to write.
Well, if you want to practice your cooking skills just in real life, you can just come to my house.
I'll be make you some bacon and biscuits.
Yes. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm in the car already.
All right, let's do it.
Carsen, what about you?
My dream job for myself is to be a short order breakfast cook, but I've not written about one. So I've had lawyers, and then more lawyers, and then some more lawyers. So I've also had a restaurateur, hotelier, rock star, artist, plastic surgeon.
Excuse me?
I know, right?
Bounty hunter.
Bounty hunter, and various cop type people, federal agents and such.
What about you, Rad?
Well, I haven't had any lawyers. I can't even imagine writing a lawyer. So no lawyers. Besides doctors and other medical professionals, a pianist, a stone sculptor, smoke jumper, alpha werewolf.
Yeah. Fairy queen.
Fairy queen.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite occupation, alpha werewolf.
That is an occupation.
I love it.
We
Listed
call it
on your
leader of the
resume.
pack.
Yes. And I just realized I didn't ask people to introduce themselves, which proves that beer was a bad idea. So with this next question, they'll introduce themselves if they want to, and then they'll answer the question. Why did you pick the careers that you picked to write about? Was there something about those jobs that seemed romantic or sexy? Melissa Brayden.
Okay, I'm Melissa Brayden, and I write contemporary romance that is fun and flirty, with a side of angst, like maybe medium angst, like 3 pancakes on a stack, if we're sticking with the breakfast theme. Let me get the question again. Why do I choose the occupations? Yeah, I think that 2 reasons. Number one, I'm going to be spending a lot of time in this world, and if I want to write a good book, I need to feel passionate about what I'm writing, and I need to be excited to sit down and to jump into that world every single day. So I think I'm always going to want to go to work with my characters and be happy that I'm there. So that's selfish of me, I realize, but I do think it makes the story better in the end because I put more into it. So I'm picking out a world that is enticing, but at the same time is something that I'm knowledgeable about, and I do believe in the end can transfer to being romancy in a way. And not boring. I'm looking at my list going, none of these are boring jobs, and not that, there are a lot of boring jobs out there. I wouldn't want to criticize anybody's job, but I just think that there's something intriguing about a job you would read about in a book. Usually that if something's in a book, it's because it's special, right? It's a little different than every day. And so I think that's the reason.
Since you write so many food-based jobs, Melissa, do you ever get hungry while you're writing?
What? Me writing all about food? Yes, the answer is most definitely yes. And not just food. I mean, I'm writing a series that's set on a vineyard right now. So there's all sorts of scenes about wine tasting and spending time among the tanks and the grapes. And, you know, I'm writing a scene at 8:30 in the morning thinking about wine. And this is not a good thing. I have my whole day ahead of me. So it can be tricky.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere in the world.
That's right, as she sips her Chardonnay at 6 a.m.
Elle, tell us who you are and why you write the careers that you do.
Well, I want to put in a request to Melissa to write a romance with the time to make the donuts guy, except with a woman.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I've actually gotten a lot of emails asking for donut shop romance, so I think it's on the horizon. You know, love across donuts. Why not?
That is not what I asked you to do, rule-breaking Elle Spencer.
Okay, so I think jobs kind of careers speak to a person's personality, and I'm attracted to strong, powerful women. I mean, I watch Kamala Harris, get off of the jet that she flies around on, and she does it like a boss, and I get all tingly. And then I think I have to plot how she's going to fall in love with the female airline pilot, because that would be hot. So yeah, I'm crushing on her right now. Anyway, she so that's kind of what I write, because that's what is interesting to me and exciting to me. And so any careers where there's some power
It's hot.
play.
Yeah.
It's hot, yeah.
Yes. And also, she's Elle Spencer, and she writes books.
Oh yeah.
She has books that are out now that you can buy. Yes. And a new one comes out in November?
It does, yes. Okay. Holiday Treatment.
Yes.
Which is a really fun little holiday rom-com.
Hilarious book.
And the tagline is making the Yuletide gayer.
Nice.
Agreed. So, Carsen, Taite, who are you, and why do you write the careers you write?
So my name is Carsen Taite, and I'm going to pick up on the Kamala theme and just say, aren't lawyers sexy? No, but it's true. I used to practice criminal defense and did that for a number of years, and it gave me lots of great story ideas. I love the setting of the legal environment. I love all legal shows, and I think it gives a great setting for strong women. And so most of my books are set in that arena, or in law enforcement, things like that. I just think it's a great palette.
Cool. Rad, who are you, and why do you write the careers that you write?
I'm Radclyffe, and I write contemporary romance, romantic intrigue, a little bit of action adventure, and paranormals. I am with Elle in that I think that what a character does speaks to, at least in my books, a lot of who they are and what motivates them. So that I almost always start with a profession. I think, wouldn't it be cool if a Secret Service agent got assigned to the president's daughter? So for me, that's the kind of thing that instantly I know what the conflict is going to be in the book. I pick things that I'm interested in, that I would either like to be or that I would like to do. So when I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a sheriff or a cowboy. So one of the first books I wrote was Innocent Hearts, which was my chance to, wear a gun belt and ride horses and get the girl in the end. And so I think that for me, profession is really critical in terms of developing character. So that's where I almost always start, is who are they? What do they do? And then the next thing I ask myself is, why aren't they with someone? Because that's going to be the barrier for the romance. I mean, whatever that reason is, that's what's keeping them from forming intimate relationships. When I first wrote Love's Melody Lost, I did that one a pianist. I didn't know anything about music, really, except for singing in the choir, because I wanted to do a retelling of Jane Eyre. So that was a little bit outside the realm of how I usually do things. And it was one of the first books I wrote, and I didn't know any better.
Really cool. Well, I know some of you have had some of the jobs that you've written about. I know that very well. But did having those jobs affect, did the experience that you've had on those jobs affect your work at all? Let's hear from Melissa.
Yeah, I think definitely. Most notably, I would say the theater background that I have influenced the 3 books that had to do with the performing arts. And I think it's a leg up to a certain extent, because it's a culture you're familiar with and you know the feel of it. And it's easier to have that transfer if it's something you've experienced firsthand. And I think it's something that you can see when a writer's in their element. When Rad is writing the medical romances, we're all there for it. And she knows that world, and the same with Carsen and the law. So that was my little niche. And I think that there was some research involved, sure, but when you write what you know, I guess you're at home in a certain sense, and you can concentrate on other things and really work through your character development and your conflict, and the rest just comes naturally. And so it's helpful, I guess, is what I want to express if you've been there before.
Well, follow-up question, as someone who has experience with the jobs that they write about, how do you keep from over-detailing, from overburdening the writer, the reader with those details? This is one of our questions from the Q&A.
Is that for me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. How do you keep from overburdening? I think sometimes I do on the first draft. Sometimes it's like, here, look what I know, and there's a big information dump. And sometimes reading it back as a part of the larger narrative, there's a glaring spotlight on, oh, here you are schooling your reader where they don't need to know that necessarily. And you can kind of go back to that old adage, show, don't tell. And if you can incorporate the action of the world or just the person living their life, it's going to show off that culture a little bit more than me in narration explaining how it goes.
Carsen, Taite, I know you've been at least a bounty hunter of the jobs that you listed. How did your personal experiences affect your work?
Just to riff off a lot of what Melissa said, I mean, I think it gives you a comfort level. And to kind of the second question you asked her, I mean, I think most of lawyering is really boring. And the thing to do is just cut out all the boring bits and try and distill it down. But it's definitely easier to do if you've done it. It's easier to be authentic, and I think that creates a different feel for the reader. But there is an added pressure with that too, because you want to make sure you're conveying. You may not take risks that you would if you didn't know something was, like, I know, well, that would never happen, so I can't just make that jump in a book. So it does have a few little restraints when you actually know the subject matter that well.
So I guess then when you watch like TV shows where they have lawyers, you're like, oh God, I can see why they did that, but
I am perfectly capable of suspending reality when I watch TV.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. Yes. Well, Rad, I know you've been an alpha werewolf as well as a surgeon. So how has those experiences affected your writing?
Well, in terms of writing the medical romances, I didn't write one until I had written, I think, probably 15 books, maybe more. I really didn't want to. I was still practicing at the time, and it really wasn't that. It's just that I wanted to write about things I didn't know, that I didn't get to do every day. And then I wrote Passion's Bright Fury, and I really enjoyed writing it, and readers seemed to like it. And for me, I agree with Carsen. I think that you can create a world that's very natural when you've been there. It's like writing a city that you've been to. I mean, when I write the hospital in the OR, everything about it is easier to write. The way it smells, the way the light looks at night, the way people move through the hospital. And you can only write that when you've done it. but I think it's, I think for me, it's a little bit of a cheat too, because I can write scenes in the book that are easy to write because I've been there. So I kind of feel like I'm almost not working as hard as I ought to work. And I think getting back to the question that you asked Melissa about how do you not write too much? Sometimes I probably do, but I kind of like doing it. And I think I was really impressed when we were talking about television in Grey's Anatomy, especially the first 4 seasons. That was an incredible show. And the surgery was really real. And there was a lot of it. And I thought, geez, if people like watching that, and obviously they do, because what is it, season 18 or something?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to get upset about a little, blood on the page.
No, the more the merrier when it comes to blood. Elle Spencer, have you had any of the jobs that you've written about?
I haven't. And so this book that's coming up will be released in May. That's the first time that I put a character in my job, which is my current job as a writer. My character just does it completely differently than I do, but that's the first time. So I don't think anyone will ever accuse me of putting in too much detail, because I kind of do enough research that I hopefully can make it seem plausible, but then I focus on the chemistry and the emotions and all that kind of thing in the story.
Well, that leads right into our next question out of the Q&A. What research do you do for these professions? Have you ever shadowed an individual or gone to a place to see what a day-to-day is like? And I'm going to add my own little thing onto that, which is, did your research change the story that you had in mind too? And who should we pick on first? We should pick on Melissa because she's making eye contact with me.
I visited a lot of vineyards.
She only remembers like the first couple, the rest of them.
I felt it was my job to get out to those vineyards and to experience that wine firsthand. I owed it to my readers to be authentic.
Yeah.
So those are my dogs going crazy, by the way. Please ignore them. But yeah, I think that whenever you can do that, that's always fantastic. I didn't have the opportunity to do that when I wrote First Position Ballet or when I was researching surfing. And I think that would have been helpful, but I think time was of the essence. I'm trying to think if anything ever changed, if the research ever changed the course. On the surfing book, I had a plot line in mind before I really delved into the research process. And then I realized it wouldn't work out because surfing competitions did not work the way that I thought they did. And so I had to pivot and kind of go with a second cousin idea for that particular conflict, which was unfortunate. But there was a time when I failed at research a little bit, and I wrote a reporter, and I had the reporter, and I thought I'd done all this deep research about what it is to be a reporter for a newspaper, but I had her attend a protest, which is apparently a no-go. Reporters are not to attend protests, and I did hear about it from people in the know. So you have to be careful because they will call you out for it. Sorry, reporters.
What about you, Carsen? How did you research jobs, and how did your research ultimately affect your story?
Well, I'll just tell you, the first book I wrote, one of the main characters owns a restaurant. The other is a plastic surgeon, which I didn't know at the time that I was submitting it to someone who knew a lot about that. But I did contact a plastic surgeon and had a dinner and asked him a million questions. And it did, I did learn a lot about, I had preconceptions, probably watched too many Nip Tuck episodes, but I did learn a lot about things and tried to make it more authentic because of that. But, I just reach out to people I know and see if I can find people. I had a hotel year, and I talked to the general manager of the Adolphus here in town. And, you can find a lot of people who love to talk about their jobs. And you just buy them a drink or coffee or dinner, and they'll tell you everything you need to know. but I don't think I've changed course in any significant way, because a lot of times when I'm talking to these people, I'm at the very beginning. So I might have some ideas like Melissa talked about, but I'm not cemented. A lot of times I'm talking to them just to get my ideas.
Aha. Yeah, sort of thievery right there.
Exactly.
Stealing, yeah. Elle Spencer.
Yeah, so Google is definitely my friend when it comes to researching occupations. Probably the most research that I've done was not about the occupation, it was about the location. And Casting Lacey, there's an important scene in a restaurant in Nobu, which is a fantastic Japanese restaurant. Highly recommend. But my wife and I felt like it was our responsibility to really, find out what that restaurant was about and go there several times in several locations, which we did. And we, Vegas and Malibu. And,
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think we got that one down.
Did your research change the way you were thinking about your story at all?
It hasn't yet, and that's probably because of the level of detail I go into with the occupation. But so far, it hasn't. But don't ask me to ever write someone who deals with math. There's just no way. A scientist or astronaut or I don't know.
So she went to work and she did some math, and who cares?
Yeah.
Radclyffe.
I'm not big on talking to people. It's not that I don't know and asking them about things. I'm just kind of like, that's not me. So I do a lot of research on the internet, especially if there's specific things I need to know. And I like to read biographies, which I think are really helpful if you're going to write about a career that you don't do yourself. I do have a really quick funny story though about the honor series, which I started writing in 1997. And there was almost nothing that you could find research-wise about the Secret Service, so I just made it all up. And then a Secret Service agent wrote to me and said that she and her friends in the Secret Service were reading it, and I was really humiliated because I had made it all up, and we got to be friends. And they don't really talk about it, but she talked about enough about the kinds of things that they did in their training that did change, and I think made some of my works a little more authentic. And now you see a lot of biographies coming out from Secret Service agents and other people in federal security professions that I do read and that I think has helped my work a lot in recent years in the honor series. But in the beginning, I just thought, well, this seems like it'd probably work.
That's cool.
One thing Rad mentioned before, when I've heard her talk, is about reading blogs too. So, you don't have to find a whole big, thick biography, but you can find a lot of great blogs.
I read a blog about a smoke jumper. Just writing the experience of being in the plane, circling the fire, and how they prepared to go out. And it was probably 5 paragraphs that probably underscored many scenes in my book.
I still think I'd rather have the whole, we have to sample all these restaurants to know how to get it done sort of thing. There's somebody in the chat roll that said they want to be Melissa's research assistant.
They're in.
Yes. Okay. Are some careers easier to include in a romance novel than others? And we're going to also pull in a question from the Q&A here about why you as authors might choose a white-collar profession rather than a working-class job. So why are some careers easier than others? And does that include, do you include working-class jobs as maybe not quite so easy to include in a romance novel? Let's go, Elle Spencer.
I think it depends on the character, but I think any job or career where the character is absolutely miserable in the job, unless it's part of the plot where they eventually find what they love and who they love. But I think if they're just really unhappy in whatever it is they're doing, that's going to be a little difficult for me to create a fun, exciting romance around So not particular jobs, but for me that I've thought of yet, but that I think would be hard.
Melissa, I think of some of the jobs that you've had as working class jobs. I mean, they're not construction or anything, but they're working in shops, working in restaurants.
This new release right here has a construction worker as the main character.
Aha,
So,
well, there we go. Person who asked
my
that question.
answer to that is, yeah, I think the working class jobs can be really, really sexy, and they can lend themselves nicely into a romance, especially if you pair them with a character that's outside of their realm, and then they can really lust after them, sink their teeth into the idea of the woman in the tool belt and all that. You can have a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun writing this book for that very reason. But I also think any kind of job where there's a lot of competition is great if you can put them both in that realm together. In the Soho series, it was fun to make those advertising agencies go up against each other and want the same thing, and it really did help the romance. And same thing with the acting books, when they're going for the same role and they're fighting to live in the same world and to have the same goals, and they both can't have them. That's really helpful when those jobs come into play and they both can't be at the top of the field.
Cool. How about you, Rad?
I've written both. I have carpenters in the Provincetown Tales. I have construction workers in the River series. I guess I like carpenters and construction workers. And, for me, I mean, again, it's just, I like to write about all kinds of different jobs. And I think I've written farmers and cowboys and all kinds of things. And I don't really think about the class of a profession. For me, it's more about how that job helps create the character, because that's always really significant for me in terms of developing character. And as Melissa said, how they interact with the other character. I have to have reasons to get the characters together. I mean, you need to keep your characters together on the page pretty much all the time. So it really helps if you've got a construction worker who's renovating somebody's house. So that kind of makes plotting a lot easier. So again, I think I choose professions that are going to keep my characters together. And if it keeps them in conflict, that's even better.
Do you think there's any profession that somebody could hand you and say, build a career out of or build a romance around this career? And you'd be like, nah, no, that's not.
No, any.
Well, for me, maybe. I mean, I might not have the kind of connection to the career. I might not have a sense of it enough. Like if somebody said, well, write someone in the theater. I mean, I could imagine doing it, but I don't have any experience. So I would probably say no, because I don't think I could do it authentically.
I think you should say it to anybody who tells you, write this. No.
No.
Bossy? Carsen, Taite. Any careers, what the hell was my question? Oh, careers easier to introduce into a romance than others.
Well, most of my books are romantic suspense intrigue. So the prosecutors, the cops, the detectives, the bounty hunters, those kind of careers kind of lend themselves to intrigue and suspense. So that makes it pretty easy to include those. But when I'm looking at who they're with, or what else is going on in the story, I've just incorporated a whole bunch of different occupations. And I don't, like Rad said, I don't really look at it as a white collar versus blue collar. It's just kind of what works for the story. And it could be anything. It could be anything.
Do you find that any one kind of occupation influences the story more than every other?
Yeah, I mean, I would say when I'm writing a suspense or intrigue, it's probably the lawyer or the cop who's kind of looking at the case, is that person will kind of lead how the story goes, and I look at what's the best foil to that.
How about you, Elle? Any of your jobs influence the story more than any other?
Yes, actually, I think in casting Lacey, they're both actresses, and they end up working on the same television series together, and that puts them in circumstances where like their first kiss was on the set, you know, playing the scene, and then they had intimate love scene on set. So that for sure influenced their relationship with each other, that close connection in their jobs.
Cool. What about you, Rad?
Can you repeat the question? I was still thinking about the kiss.
Yeah, I just got to find it again. Which of your characters' jobs influenced the love story more than any other?
Well, I hope that all of them did. But I guess if you said more than any other, it has to be
Yes.
the honor series. I mean, I
Okay.
think that's the greatest conflict probably that I've created.
It's awesome. It's baked right in there. Protect the woman. Oh, you fell in love with her. Melissa.
Anytime their jobs overlap in any way, it's always going to influence the story more because it just offers you so much more page time with the occupation. It's not something that they're leaving from and then picking up their love life and then returning to their job. It's all overlapping and it's all happening together. So when I look over books like Waiting in the Wings and Sparks Like Ours and First Position, where they're reporting to work and running into the other person, those are the books where it almost feels like their professional world is an additional character.
Oh, sweet. Let's take another question from the Q&A, which also happens to be one of my questions, you know, just in case people think I'm not clever. What career would you like to write about, but you haven't done it yet? Carsen Taite?
Medical examiner.
Would you actually go, would you be like, can I watch you do the thing?
I've actually seen a bunch of autopsies. When I was in law school, we were right near the medical school, and we had some exchange courses. So they would come and learn about, you know, bioethics and things like that. And we would go over there and, you know, watch them take apart bodies. And but it was just fascinating to me. And it wasn't at all what I had in my head. But I'm not confident. I mean, I'd have to do a lot more research.
Yeah, there'd probably be some math in there too.
Yeah.
That's the one that scares me. She does the math. Elle Spencer?
Well, I've always wanted to write a book with the title Totes My Goats, subtitle of Goaty Romance. So I think she'd probably have to be a goat farmer, or what is it, farmer or rancher? Rather?
I don't think you farm goats. I think you're starting below where the knowledge you should have.
You shepherd goats.
You shepherd, okay, yeah. So, but the problem with it is that Barbara Ann, I'm sure, would not let me use any of the lyrics to the Sound of Music song.
You know, it is.
Right?
I keep telling you people, it's not up to me. It is the law. The law. It's the law.
It's the law, I know. I'll try to avoid it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Rad.
Yeah, there's a gopher. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just trying to think of one because I'm getting ready to plot a new book, but it's not going to be in this one. But architect, I think. I really love structure of all kinds. So that would suit me, I think.
Yeah, I like that too. Melissa.
I love a good medical romance. I do. I gobbled up all of Rad's, all the ones I could get my hands on. I love reading them. I love watching the TV shows, but I know my lane and I know I don't have the knowledge base to write it. So I'm going to stay on the side of reader and enjoy them from that perspective. But yeah, in a perfect world, if I could just assume that knowledge and start writing, that would be a dream come true. But it didn't happen that way.
You could do somebody who works in a hospital or
who sits in the waiting room and
office.
watches.
No, well, I mean, if you're in reception or if you're in something like that, then you'd be there.
The cafeteria at the
Yes. Oh my God.
Medical adjacent. That would be the
yes.
title of the series. A medical adjacent series.
Make your own subgenre. It's not a medical mystery. It is a medical adjacent mystery.
Perfect. I see my career now.
Okay. Let's see.
I love how in the chat roll they're still talking about goats.
I know.
The goats have got more press than anything else.
I know. You're all going to have to write an anthology where one of you is designing a goat ranch and the other is like
Goat farm.
Go farm.
Yes. Goat farm, and then the other has to perform necropsies on goats to figure out why they're dying.
Just a quick word about goats. My goats are all bred by the nuns. Okay, so there's another element for the goat stories.
Hell
See,
yeah.
Sound of Music. Sound of Music. There you go. There's the connection.
Factors right
Hey,
into you, Elle.
Hey, the other main character could be a yodeler.
It's going places, Elle. You keep going. You don't give up, all right? You got this.
Got it.
So I could see the analogy is just going to, or the analogy, the anthology is just going to be called Goats WTF or something like that.
There you go.
Why the hell goats? Okay. So here's a good question from the Q&A. What are the risks of characters dating at work when the goal is a happy ending? Ooh, the perils of at-work dating. Who wants to take that one? Melissa looks very thoughtful.
Well, you know, it's interesting because we have the Me Too movement now, you know, and so things are a little bit different and people are much more aware of workplace behaviors and the do's and the do nots. And so I think we're not far enough into it to understand how it's going to affect romance and the office romance specifically. You know, we don't want to alienate anybody, but at the same time, the office romances are pretty hot. We don't want to lose what we have. But so I think it's going to be a little touchy for a little while. That's an interesting, I didn't fully answer the question, but that's an interesting aspect to that topic. I think that I wonder about a lot. I want to see where it's all going to go because I don't want to see those romances go away. But at the same time, it's an awareness and we should be responsible. So it's one of these for me. I'm going to wait it out and see how it goes.
Interesting. Brad, any thoughts?
I think it can work. I think that it depends on the power dynamic and how you situate the characters within the workplace. You know, I mean, obviously, I think there are areas that are always going to be really touchy. You know, teacher-student romances are popular, but that's obviously a really difficult area, and age plays a huge factor in that. As does what's the supervisory role. And I think that's true. I try to be a little bit careful in my medical romances. I mean, you know, I'm going to probably make an unpopular statement here, but residents and attendings are all adults. And there's not that much power difference between attendings and residents. And, you know, I've had people, not recently, but actually probably years ago, concerned about some of my books where attendings and residents, you know, were the main characters. And very honestly, I don't see that as a problem. I don't think that, you know, again, it's a question of how much power truly exists between these two individuals in this setting and how you construct that. And I think that's the real element that we have to pay attention to when we write workplace romances, whatever they may be.
That's interesting to me because so many TV shows and movies and stuff make it seem like the attending could just tank your career, or the resident, or whoever the hell is the top one.
They could make you miserable, but it's not to the attending's advantage to get rid of you. You're doing all their work.
Oh, okay,
you know.
yeah.
Sorry, guys out there, but it's true. I mean, if you've been a resident, you know that's true. And once you get to, all you want to do is get to be an attending so you can have residents and treat them the same way.
Yeah, that's just life.
Yeah.
Elle Spencer.
You know, this comes up in my next book, The Holiday Treatment, as you know, what to do with the whole boss and subordinate situation. So yeah, you know, it can be tricky and dicey, and I'm not going to give it away because I want you to read the book.
You shouldn't. No, you shouldn't do it.
But yeah, yeah, I think we do have to be a little bit more careful now, even though it's really hot between two women. You know, the whole falling for your boss thing.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Carsen.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just riffing on what everybody else has said, I mean, it is something I think it's important to be aware of what's going on in the world and the imbalance and what kind of things that could create. But I also, you know, these books are really popular, the workplace romances, and there's a reason for that. A lot of us spend so much of our time at work, and that's where we're going to meet the people. That's where we're going to have our best dating pool, you know. And sometimes if there is a power dynamic in the actual itself, you can sometimes balance that out by changing the dynamic in their personalities. So I was trying to think of a specific example and I can't, but I just think you can make the person who has the subordinate job maybe have a power in another way, so that it balances out somehow.
Yeah.
Well, and I think in fiction too, unlike in real life, we can make sure that everybody's having a good time. The author knows everybody's into this. Nobody's on one side of this going, how do I get out? You know, I think that's something so that people shouldn't be like, oh, you know, this is setting a bad example for real life. And it's like, well, if you could see into the head of the person you're interested in and know that they're giving you the green light. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to write a character who has a complex job? And we're going to ask Elle Spencer first.
Like I said, Google for sure. And you know, there's so much you can find out just with that. And then, you know, asking someone who knows, someone who's in the business. With Cassidy Lacey, my wife knows someone in the Hollywood world, so we talked to her about different things as well, and that was really helpful.
How would you separate? I mean, there's so much crap on the internet, though. So do you do the whole like verify from 3 different sources sort of thing?
Yes and no. I've done that. Yes, I've tried to make sure, but yeah, it hasn't been a problem for me so far. But again, that's because I don't dive too deep into the career in my books.
How about you, Melissa?
YouTube, and I'm serious, that's not a joke. YouTube is excellent. You may not realize it, but there are short little docuseries on pretty much any topic you would ever want to learn about, because it's interesting to somebody. Even if it's a topic that you don't find interesting, there are tons of people out there who do find it interesting, and I would much rather watch a little documentary about something than, you know, read 5 pages on it. I think I'm just going to absorb it a little bit more, and you get the sights and sounds and visuals and maybe a montage of different interviews of people who do that particular job. I'm speaking most specifically about the Tangle Valley #3 book, where I'm writing the character of Madison, who is a winemaker, and there's a lot of chemistry involved, but there's also a lot of farming involved. And as much as I know about wine, I don't know a ton about winemaking. And so you can find a ton out there of people who are actually working on the job and will talk to you via YouTube about what they're doing that very day, what their next week is going to look like. And you can get a sample really quickly of a day in the life, and then that can transfer into your book quite easily. So YouTube, everybody.
And then you seek out separate sources too, just so you can get a broader picture. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, screw it then.
There's a mixture involved. Yeah.
What about you, Rad?
I would say that if you're going to develop a character with a really complex occupation that you don't know anything about, that probably less is more. That probably you should not go into tremendous detail, because in all likelihood, you're going to miss things or get things wrong. And in most instances, it's probably not super important to get into the total nitty gritty, you know, like the chemistry behind the wine, although you got to know about when to bring the grapes in and how long they stay in the barrels and the things that make it real and authentic, but maybe not go into tremendous depth if it's not your own personal experience. And I agree, YouTube, totally. I like that for personal experiences. I used YouTube a lot when I was developing my transgender character, because I could get first person narrative.
Yes.
So that was really helpful.
would you point people away from an incredibly complex job like, say, astrophysics or something, if they actually know nothing about it? Would you counsel them to start near their home?
I wouldn't say no. I mean, I've written things I've never done. And I think that I've written enough of the flavor of the work, and you can find enough to write, as Melissa said, a day in the life. I think that's important. But, you know, if I were going to write an airplane pilot, I probably wouldn't write a scene right in the cockpit.
Well, I remember wanting to write a story about an archaeologist like Indiana Jones, and then I took an archaeology course, and I was like, that is not, it's not real, not real.
Yeah.
Carsen, Taite.
When you asked that question, I wrote, don't dive too deep, because I think I have a lot of people contact me about legal stuff, you know, and they'll say, well, they want to know so much detail. And I'm like, what do you really need for your story? You know, I mean, it's great if you want to know the detail, but I don't suggest info dumping, you know, and I think sometimes when people go too deep into something, they just feel the need. I did all this research. I need to put it on the page. Yeah. And people will know if it's authentic or not. They'll just get it. So, you know, you want to get the feel of something, but you don't need so much the detail on that. So I agree. YouTube is an excellent source because it does give you that three-dimensional. You often get to see someone in their workplace. You know, you don't get the smell, but you could hear it, you could see it. It's
unlike some spy novels where after you read them, you're like, okay, I can build a nuclear submarine now. I've got all the plans and how to do it. Well, we've only got a few minutes left, so real quick, I want all of you to tell me what your newest release is and what the occupations are of the people in it. Melissa, Brayden.
Okay, so I have Two to Tangle that is coming out in November. November 10th is the official release, but you can get it early from Bold Strokes on November 1st. It's book 2 in the Tangle Valley romances, and the main characters are Gabriella, who is a chef, and she's opening her own restaurant on the vineyard grounds, and Ryan, who is a construction worker working on building the restaurant.
Awesome. Radclyffe.
Treacherous Seas is coming out November 1st. It is the something or other in the Provincetown Tales, 9, 10, I think. Other than the primary characters who have been in it all along, Reese and Tori, there is an epidemiologist from the CDC, a new paramedic character, and a new cop, and a new romance.
Oh, look forward to that one. Elle Spencer.
Holiday Treatment coming out November 1st. And one character is a story editor by day, and she writes screenplays by night, Christmas movies. And the other character is a development executive at the network.
And it's very hot.
Very.
Carsen.
So my new release, it's out now, October. It is Best Practice. It's the 3rd legal affairs romance. It is, as you can might imagine, have a lawyer and another lawyer.
What?
It's
No,
an age gap.
There are lawyers in it.
No goats? Where are goats?
And there might be a goat. You have to read it to find out.
That's true. All of these books might have goats. You must read in order to see. Well, thank you very much, all my lovely panelists, for talking jobs with me. Bold Strokes Books will be back tomorrow with more Bookathon fun, and we will see you then, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Great
Thanks
job.
so much.
Guys.
Good night.